Hi, I'm Nick Hague and I'm the host of the World's Greatest Business Thinkers podcast. Today, I'm with Paul Hague and I'm here to talk about strategy. And in the first instance, I think we should begin, Paul, by talking about what is a strategy. A lot of people confuse missions, objectives, strategies and tactics. What makes a strategy different from those?
You're right. They all are part of a strategic plan, aren't they? The point about strategy is, and I think it's the most important point to start with, is that it is something that is long term. And by long term in business, I mean it's unlikely to be less than a couple of years, and it could be 5 years. It's a long term plan. And I think we're all impatient within business to get results. So one of the problems with strategies is we've decided where we want to go. That's the objective of the plan. And we want to get there as quickly as possible. So there's a rush to do things. So let's just step back a minute, because you mentioned then the words vision and mission. And these are very vague words, which I think as a sort of practical marketeer, I'm not too bothered about. People say, I want to fly to the moon. That's the sort of vision or the mission. Whereas the objective might be that we're going to build a spacecraft which can get us close to the moon or something, but far more specific. And then, of course, once you've got your objectives lined up, you then need to have some tactics that will allow you to deliver that, and then you need to implement it. So the word strategy encompasses this whole plan that we're going to take forward from a vision of where we want to go, but be a bit more specific about how we're going to do it in terms of the objectives.
Yeah. And like you say, it's a roadmap, isn't it? A plan establishing the actions that needed to be taken to get to that end goal. And I think it's important that these principles are shared throughout the organization, to help the company reach its objectives, not just held within a few heads in the C-suite around the boardroom table.
Well, a word you use there, Nick, and I think it's worth just coming back to, is it's a map. And if you imagine, because I know that you're a hiker, a walker, and imagine that you're going to go on a walk. The vision might be we're going to go on a lovely walk today, but the strategy might be we're going to climb Scarfell or Helvellyn or some specific walk, some specific mountain, and you have a route by which you want to do it, and that's on the map. Yeah. And you would have a plan as to how long it's going to take you, whether it's going to take you 5 hours or whatever it is. And you would have some other thing. You would also have some probably thought about what you would do in case there was a problem, so there might be a couple of routes that you might consider in order to achieve your objective, which is to get to the top of that mountain. So, yeah, it's a plan, it's a map.
Well, let's imagine that we have a responsibility for developing a strategy for an existing business. Where would we start?
Well, if people listen to these introductions, of which we've got all, 13 different ones for the website, it might get a bit boring if I say, well, you start with a situation analysis. You have to do some research to find out where we are. It's no good just saying we've got a strategy without understanding the details of the market size and the segments that you're going to deliver to, those perhaps that you're not going to do business with, the trends in the market, any shocks or risks that you might anticipate over the next couple of years during the period of the strategy. So the starting point has to be a situation analysis. That's where we begin.
Yeah.
And once we've got the situation analysis out of the way, we might want to think of some other things that we could look at. So there may be a SWOT analysis that we would do. It's always useful to do that. We understand the groundwork from the situation analysis, but what are our strengths and our weaknesses? What are the opportunities within the marketplace, and what threats might we face? And how do they interconnect these, the strengths and the opportunities? Where do they connect? And the threats and the opportunities and so on. So a SWOT analysis would always be a good thing to follow from the situation analysis.
Yeah. And I think you're right.
Once we've got that, Nick, we then start to get into what people probably are eager to get into, which is, what about Porter's generic forces? Should we have a strategy of going for a premium brand and high quality, or should we go for low price? Or are we going to get into a niche or something like that? But that only comes after you've done that spade work, after you've done the situation analysis and you've done your SWOT.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's about defining your competitive advantage. What are your strengths? What are your targets? Where you can focus for growth, of course. And okay, you might say that we would always argue to make these decisions based on information you hold within the company, but also fact-based decisions, because we're market researchers. So to lean on market research is often important in order to get that information to feed into your business strategy.
Well, I'll pick up a point you just mentioned there, the competition. There's very few companies that exist in the market without competition. One of the, if you like, problems with strategy is that you're never certain what events are going to occur during this plan, this great plan that you've set out. And the competition almost certainly are going to cause problems during that period. They may launch a new product, they may reduce their prices, they may have a big promotional campaign. And you've got to anticipate those shocks that will occur within the market. You shouldn't think, oh my goodness, a competitor's just done this, therefore we ought to change our strategy. The strategies are going to remain the same. The tactics might change, and that's how you maneuver around what might be a mild recession, a big recession, a supply problem, because you might not be able to get your raw materials from China or somewhere, or it may be a competitive event within the market, and you have to be prepared for that. And that's why the frameworks are never perfect. They're always a guideline, a structure into which you have got to fit and massage your own situation analysis and where you're going. You're going to have to be prepared to be flexible within that structure.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think it's a critical component of it. I think Jeff Bezos of Amazon fame, as we all know, he holds a strategy meeting every Tuesday just to make sure with his management team it's front and center that if things are changing, that they can at least pivot on those changes and make those tactical changes, but all the while.
Well, I'm not sure what he calls it, Nick. I mean, if he called it a strategy meeting, I might be a little bit critical of that, because you don't have a strategy meeting every Tuesday. Your strategy is fixed for long term. You might have a strategy meeting to see where you are on the strategy. Now, that's really important. One of the things that is important when you're developing a strategy is having a control loop, so that you know how you're doing and you're able to adjust to it. That's likely to result in tactical changes rather than major changes to the strategy.
Yeah. And therefore having those KPIs or key performance indicators that at least you can measure on, are you making progress? Are you making any change on that?
Yeah.
So we've mentioned the SWOT framework already. Can you talk to us about some of your favourite frameworks for strategy development?
Well, yeah, so the ones that I've mentioned already are situation analysis. It might be a pest, you might do all. So, by the way, there are 70 frameworks on our website, all to do with strategy, but they're often to help you against a specific element of the strategy. So there might be one on pricing, because that's got to be an important part of your strategy, and there'll be those on promotion as well. So it's really like saying, who do you love best, your mum or your dad? All these frameworks are really important depending on what the issue is, what the problem is that you're facing. Although some people are critical of a SWOT, I think it's absolutely fundamental to developing a strategy if you've done the rest of the spade work, if you've done the rest of the homework. And then once you've done that, then you can get into, like I mentioned, Porter's generic forces or Mintzberg's 5 Ps. So Mintzberg had this idea that a strategy could be different depending on where you are in the market. He quotes the example of a strategy based on competition. So Canon, who make photocopiers, were going to launch those photocopiers into the UK, where the bulk of the market, if you did your situation analysis, was in the southeast, in London. This is where most photocopiers were bought. So somebody could have had the idea of competing against Rank Xerox, who had a monopoly of the UK market, or a very big share of the market in the UK. Now, what Mintzberg said that Canon did, and it was the right idea, is they built up their big position in Scotland. Scotland was a peripheral market to rank Xerox, so they hardly cared whilst they were launching and building their share within Scotland. But once they got a very sizable share in Scotland, they rolled their strategy south and became very successful in the rest of the UK. So that was a strategy specifically aimed at beating a particular weakness, if you like, or strength of the competition being rank Xerox. And he mentions other strategies which might be showing that you need flexibility. He mentions one which is to do with, it was with Honda, who were launching their motorcycles into the USA. And we're talking now about sort of 40 odd years ago. And the Honda had recognised that the big opportunity within the States was for big motorcycles, Harley Davidson style motorcycles. And they set up their dealerships, and they were highly unsuccessful in penetrating the US market. No one preferred to buy this unknown Honda bike rather than a Harley Davidson or one of the other brands that they were aware of. And in order that Honda could manage its dealerships, it had sent lots and lots of small Honda motorcycles into the USA, and the dealerships used these for buzzing around. And locals saw people buzzing around on these small Hondas and said, how can I get one of these? And so by accident, so this is Mintzberg saying that, you might have a plan. Your plan might be to sell big Honda bikes into the USA. But if you find out that there's an alternative plan which is better, that your market's better suited to these small buzz bikes, then change your plan, which is what they did. And they became very successful, as we know, with the small bikes in the States. So Mintzberg's 5 Ps is something also to look at. And as I say, there's 70 other frameworks to have a look at on the website.
Yeah, that Honda story. In fact, I touch on that with Wendy Smith on the podcast. She's written a book called Both I'm Thinking, and it refers to how Honda integrated within the US market and how it came about. Yeah. And it's a fascinating story, that. So there's 70 plus different frameworks around strategy. If people want to know more about strategy frameworks, where should they look?
Well, clearly, look on our website. If you go to all the frameworks, there's an ability then to choose a category of framework that you're particularly interested in. And it could be marketing frameworks or pricing frameworks or product innovation frameworks. But there's one on strategy. So click on the strategy on all the frameworks, and there you will find the 70 frameworks which we encourage you to look at.
That's great, Paul. Well, thanks for spending time just touching on this subject. There's lots to delve into, so hopefully all the viewers can now take some guidance from that and go and have a look at the website and its full detail.
Thanks, Nick.